Welcome everyone. This episode of the ACC History Series looks at challenges and accomplishments of ACC during the startup phase of the Asian Community Nursing Home, which opened in April 6, 1987. While the community was celebrating the completion of construction, ACC knew it had only begun its work. It faced a daunting task of ramping up from 3 employees in the ACC office to more than 100 at the newly licensed skilled nursing facility, from 0 occupancy to 99 residents. Having a new nursing home management team to organize and put in place things like the clinical operations, admissions and discharges, housekeeping, finances, contracting, and a host of other functions to start up the nursing home and assure that it met community expectations. For the next hour or so, I'll moderate the panel. My name is Donna Yee. I'm the past CEO at ACC, and we have several panelists and guests who were involved in the planning and startup of what is now the ACC Care Center. Many of them have been involved for over a decade. First, I'd like to thank each panelist for taking time to share your stories. Please introduce yourself and mention the year and what role or roles that you've had from the very beginning in becoming involved with ACC. So our panelists are Chiang Wang, Patty Harada, and Judi Keen. And we have 2 that are going to be part of our panel remotely, and they are Jean Chong and Norman Fong. So Chiang, would you start us off with a self-introduction?
Thank you, Donna. It's a pleasure to be here. My first interaction at the nursing home was during the 1980s. I brought in a group of line dance performers to celebrate the Chinese New Year at the care center that used to be called a nursing home. I still remember that when I brought them in, the residents were sitting in the wheelchairs very close to the performers. I was very worried because, as you know, the line dance tends to be extremely noisy. And I told one of the staff whether it would be appropriate because I was afraid somebody might have a heart attack. And the staff told me that, don't worry, many of them are hard to hear. So anyway, I was happy to pick up the red envelope with money and to share with the line dance. So that was in the I would say late 1980s, while I was serving on the board of another nonprofit organization. Then my mother was admitted to the care center in I would say 1997 or 8. And then my father moved in around, I think it was 2004. And my father-in-law moved in around 2007. So it was a family affair. So that's how I got involved with the nursing home. I volunteered there when they were at the nursing home, since I had not much to do. So, but I ran into Donna. And from time to time, she asked me to serve on the board, and that's how I got involved directly with the ACC. And so the nursing home is still like a family to me because I stayed there a lot when my loved ones were there.
Great, thank you. Patty?
I'm Patty Harada. I was the first director of nurses when the facility first opened, and I was there for maybe the first couple of years, and it was an interesting experience.
Judi?
I'm Judi Keen. I've been involved in with the nursing home I still call it the nursing home instead of the care center, even though it changed names. Too many years of being involved. And so, let's see, my father had a stroke and was in a different facility, and I was desperately trying to find a better place for him to be. And so one Saturday, I just walked in, and everybody was so welcoming. They were just, my goodness, it was great. And it felt good, and I said, would you by any chance have an opening? And it turned out they did. And so my father was here for the next 5 years, and then later my mother. And so during that time, I think it was in 1999, it could have been 1998, I then was started on the care center, the nursing home committee, and I've been on it ever since. And so that's over 20 years now. And then
Who would have known?
Yeah, who would have known? And then it grew to being on the board, a couple of stints, and then since then, all sorts of committees, as you all know. So it's a community of people that I really value.
Great, thank you. Maybe we could ask our two panelists who are participating with us remotely if they could self-introduce. Norm, would you go first?
Yes. My name is Norman Fong. I was involved in the healthcare industry for many years during my career as a pharmacist, and I was active in many organizations. And I came to learn about ACC back in the, I believe it was in the 80s when I was recruited to help out with the fundraising aspect of ACC nursing home, the bingo program. And I participated there for several years. I thought it was fun, and it was for a good cause. Subsequently, I was asked to join the board of directors, and this was like towards the end of the 90s. And from there, I was on several committees, and I eventually became asked to become the president for ACC back at the turn of the decade, about 2000, and that's when I believe we went forward in recruiting people to help us with the future growth and evolution of our organization into what it is today. And I believe that was when we were involved in bringing on Donna Yee. And from there, she helped the organization to get to where it is today. I'm very happy that I was involved with ACC because ultimately my mother became a resident in, I believe it was like 2013 and 2014. And I was very, very grateful and thankful that there was a place for her to be able to go to as she ended her days on earth there, and she received the best care possible. So again, I am very thankful that we had ACC at that time, and again, thank you all for helping her at that time.
Great. Well, thank you, Norm. I think next, maybe we could ask Jean Chong if you could talk a little bit about how you came to be a part of ACC.
Oh, okay. My name is Jean Chong, and I've been involved with ACC and their annual fundraisers in the past. And what I got more involved with, and I know I wanted to do that, is probably in 2005 when my father was admitted to ACC. And that was a really good experience because at that time they also approached me to sit on the board. So I decided, well, since my father was at the nursing home, I might as well just join the board and find out what's been happening since I haven't been involved for so many years except for the fundraisers. So when my father was admitted, it was very, very nice. I didn't realize it's probably very comfortable for my father because it was, Asians. And then plus that, we recognized a lot of other family members that lived down the street from us that were also at the nursing home. But my father was probably in and out of that nursing home for about 5 years. He went there because he fell and he had a fracture. And then he got well, so he decided he wanted to go home. We got him home and we told him, do not use the cane, use your walker. But he didn't listen. So guess what? We were back at the nursing home again, and this time he had to have a hip replacement. So he was almost there for almost about a year. And he had really good care because what was really interesting in the rehab center, the fellow told him, well, if you don't do your rehab, you might not be able to walk. So he was very determined, and he would even go into the exercise room to do extra workouts to improve his strength. So I was really happy that the staff encouraged him, and he really liked the staff because, they really took good care of him. And then after he left, since he was so well, we went to assisted living for about a year before he got admitted back into ACC for about 3 or 4 months before he passed on because he had, episode of wound care. So we ended up back at ACC, and I was so glad they were able to do that because in the past when we first started, they weren't doing wound care. So they had nurses that were trained to take care of wound care because there would be a doctor coming in to take care of his skin. They would scrape him, and it was just gross. I just couldn't believe. And then he'd be sitting there because the nurses would help him, make sure he's okay and that, he stays dry and everything. So I'm really pleased with it, and I'm still continuing to volunteer. I'm sitting on the care center committee as well as the fundraiser and also the fund development. So that's all I can manage right now. But I'm planning to maybe switch a little later on to another committee. But I feel that the nursing home is probably my passion because that's where we have to share with the community and let their loved ones know that we do have the best facilities because we want to be number one. Because during this time, we've got a lot of awards because of the leadership that we've had at the nursing home, which I still call nursing home too, but it's a care center. But I'm seeing all the staff being trained, cross-trained, so they know their jobs, and as well as having a doctor there available, Dr. Stringer. He's been really instrumental with the staff and, training them and helping them, and also with the residents too, and I think that's really important. So this is where I am, and I really am very thankful that we have this organization to serve the Asian community.
Thank you very much, Jean. And we're going to come back to you a little later in the discussion to involve you more in some of the other topics that we're going to cover. But that was a great recap on the kinds of things that we're doing at the Care Center today. I wanted to bring us back to the early days when basically, in my recall, when I think about some of the photos of the construction of the nursing home, I mean, I didn't see any other buildings around. It looked like it was in the middle of just a lot of dust and dirt. And so when the nursing home was first built, it was really kind of all by itself. It wasn't really in the middle of a residential neighborhood where people were fully engaged, walking to the store, and they weren't sort of walking from close by to visit family members. But also it was during a time when the board of ACC, I think, were still meeting at Tambara House. And they were, you know, we talked in earlier episodes about the activism of many of the board members, many of the volunteers. And then they spent several years, really almost 10 years, in fundraising, in going to public hearings, negotiating with the licensing people at the state, filling out lots of papers and forms. These were things that the ACC board had really not done before to run any of its other programs. And so this was really a large and a new venture. Maybe Patty, you could talk a little bit about some of the first meetings that you went to when the board was talking about its plans for the nursing home.
Oh, goodness. It was at the house, and we would be sitting in the kitchen or whatever room it was that held whoever was there for the meetings, and we would talk about what was necessary. And from my personal experiences as an acute care nurse, going into long-term care was a whole different ball of wax. We knew the basics of what we needed, but we didn't necessarily know how to go about getting it. So I feel like I was hired because basically I was begged into the position.
How did that happen? Who recruited you?
Chewy.
Chewy Ito.
Chewy Ito, yeah.
Wow.
You know, I was either don't get gas at his gas station anymore or give in to him. And so I decided, yes, okay, I will give it a whirl. But boy, were they going to be in trouble.
Yeah, and I understand that the first medical director at the nursing home was Dr. Wang.
Yes, and I begged him because we knew there were certain personnel that we had to have on board, and the medical director, of course, was one of them. And he was gracious enough to do it not knowing what his responsibilities were going to be. And I could hardly tell him what they were going to be. The other person that was very, very important besides him was, of course, the administrator, which they had. And Fred was, I believe, from Washington State. And of course, the nursing staff. I had to have a nurse coordinator because we knew that she would be the one that would be training the certified nursing assistants and the licensed LVNs that we had. I had to train the RNs, and again, it was like the blind leading the blind. If it wasn't for Kathy Barr, who knew and was experienced in long-term care, I don't know if we would have been able to open properly. And as it was, we knew we had to have certain things in place. There were certain criteria that the state absolutely mandated. And that was for every nursing home, not just ours. But because we were the Asian community nursing home at that time, we were going to be the best. Hands down, there were no excuses, no compromises with that. And so that's what we aimed for. I look back on it now, and most of us who were newly hired figured that we were like the I don't know what you call it. We were the test guinea pigs.
Guinea pigs.
So in the early days, did you have to spend a lot of time interviewing people and
Absolutely.
recruiting staff?
Absolutely. I mean, in my case, it wasn't just the nursing staff. I mean, we had nobody hired, and it was a pleading and begging compromise that we got who we got sometimes at the time. My nursing staff, I felt very comfortable with whoever I hired. But when you're sitting in on interviews for the dietitian, the activities person, the office staff, social services, and not quite knowing exactly what to ask, it was interesting.
Right, but it was really a tall order job, because most of us know, if we've been in a nursing home, we know that the director of nursing really runs everything. All of the care, all of the decisions about admitting staff, even if you delegate some things, really the director of nursing is the most responsible person.
Well, yes, because you have to know what the capabilities are of your staff. And to the point where we were talking with family members about their loved one who was coming in, and they were wanting to insist that their family member had a certain diet, and our dietitian was unable to provide that. We could do the taste of certain things, or the flavor of certain things, but puree didn't quite cut it. So there were those little challenges outside of the nursing areas that we were contending with.
Right.
And that's where social services came in. Even though that person had different responsibilities, that person also had to deal with the family members. And it was a lot of convincing these families that knew what they wanted. We knew what we had to provide, but we couldn't always provide what they wanted.
Right, so actually quite a bit of push and pull, because people had different expectations, right, and different things that they wanted from this brand new facility in the community.
Right, and I mean, it was a gorgeous facility, and I know probably today it needs to be redone to a lot of extent, because it probably is not matching California regulations now, because they change over the years.
Well, we'll talk about that a little bit later on too.
I was thinking about when you were talking of those very first times, is that how did you coordinate, or how did you manage hiring, interviewing, and getting all set up at the same time that the building was being finished, or did you have to wait until the building was finished?
Oh, no.
How did that work?
The board started advertising for staff well before the building was completed.
Okay.
But we didn't have commitments from a lot of those potential staff members because we didn't have the building.
Right.
So it was kind of a tough thing to coordinate.
Yeah.
we knew what we had to have initially to open the
Right.
facility to be able to be inspected. So we were able to at least get that initial staff there and the initial people that we needed to have. And so we got through that first inspection, but then they came back again once we started admitting patients because they needed to see then what the level of care we were providing. And it had to be within state guidelines.
And at the same time, were you having to balance out the number of residents or patients, whatever you called them then, and the number of staff and things like maintenance? I mean, there were all sorts of things that you had to hire at the same time that you were accepting new residents.
There were times when we could not admit as many patients or residents as the board would have liked to have seen because we didn't have the staff. Or I would be coming in the middle of the night to be that licensed nurse,
Right.
to be on duty.
So although we were licensed for 99 beds, give me an idea of the beginnings. Did you have 5 residents, 50 residents, or how did this balance out?
We kind of screened. We had so many potential patients
Okay.
that were coming in from home. And that made it very difficult because we had to have the doctor giving us the correct admitting orders. And most of these doctors didn't know what they were ordering or how they had to order to give the right care.
So the patients or the residents went through their own doctor at that point?
I believe so.
Okay.
The person's physician had to write an order
Okay.
that the person needed to be in a skilled nursing facility. And in that order, besides the diagnoses, they would have to order certain kinds of care, medications, but also if there's certain kinds of exercises.
Activity levels.
And then if they should be permitted to walk or not,
Okay.
or if they were supposed to use equipment or whatever. So that basically the stay was at the doctor's order.
Including food and all of those things?
Food, if there was a special diet, any of those things. So sometimes the family members would be aware of all of these specific things. And sometimes they weren't because the family members were often thinking about mom at home. And then now she's at a nursing home, and the difference was mainly that there would be more people to care for mom, not so much all of these other restrictions.
What we were dealing with in the initial phases was families who wanted their family members in, but who were bearing a lot of guilt in doing so. A lot of it, I think, is our Asian mentality, and they were very happy that we were opening. But they wanted everything for their family member, and we couldn't quite provide the way that they wanted it. But we got a lot better at it as time went by. And so they were there and they brought in tons of stuff that either we couldn't have or didn't need. But they wanted to be so helpful also. So it was a balancing act.
Yeah.
Great,
Thank you.
So I'm thinking, we've done some interviews with some of the staff at the nursing home who have been there for 30 plus years.
Yeah.
And maybe we could show some of the videos and then continue our discussion.
My name is Marissa Belmes. I came to ACC because I was studying to be a nurse. As a lot of Filipino mothers, they all want their daughters to be nurses. So that's how I came to ACC. I started as a CNA and worked as a CNA for 3 years until I moved to the office as a receptionist, and then to bookkeeping, and then to now into a billing manager.
Yes, and there's a part of your work when you actually get to know the families. Could you talk about that?
Yes, they always become our family. And I also see that in my own experience, in where my mom was a resident here at ACC before she passed away. I think being in here for 30 years, I've seen a lot of, their parents are here, and I see the daughters or the sons coming to visit the mom, and then over the years they become our residents. So we see that a lot. It's like a generational, service that we do to family, I believe. And I think they do like that because I know the reason why they come, because the care is good. They feel welcome, and that's why they come back, not just for their parents and then for themselves as well.
I started in 1990. When I moved to America, then, when I holding my daughter to walk by this facility, and I look at that, is Asian Community Nursing Home at that time called ACC Nursing Home. Then I'm thinking, maybe a lot of Asian people, living here. Then I come to apply if they can hire me. But I'm very lucky, they hire me right away. At that time, I don't have that much experience, for long-term care. Because in Hong Kong, I'm working totally different job. I used to work in the operating room for more than 13 years. And I work in the ICU, and also I work in the OBGYN. So I don't have that much experience for long term. The DON at that time, he's really to give me very flexible work hours, because I still have to take care of my babies. Actually not babies, young kids, at home. I have 3 kids. So I have to spend time to stay home with them. And I would like to get some working experience during weekend. So they're really happy to hire me to work on weekend. I find out at that time, there's a lot of residents speak Chinese, and they speak different, Chinese dialects. And I'm luckily I know several of the dialects. I'm able to communicate with the residents. At that time, we don't have the computer system. Everything is handwriting, and each patient has their own doctor. So in case they have any problem, we need to find out who's the doctor and who you need to call. That's all about, not right now, we have only, the director of the doctor, it is easier to get the doctor. Okay. But at that time, you need to find out their number and call different doctors.
Well, my name is Warda Gounder. And how I came to ACC is a long story. Yeah.
We have time.
You have time? Yeah, actually, when I came from Fiji, I hit the recession. The United States was in recession in the 90s, and I didn't know the meaning of recession, and I was at telecom engineering back home. It was a difficult finding job. It was a survival. Then I got a security job just to start off, to support the family. So at the moment I was working for the Methodist Hospital, one of the Wells Fargo Guard services over there, and there was some to me, that was my new foot in the America, so just learning the path. So I didn't know anything about nursing or all the rehab or anything. So I was more like a technical person out there. So while working for the security, there was a lot of boys from foreign countries also working there as a security guard, and they also had 2 second jobs. And then while I was working there, also thinking about the future, which direction you're going to go, because there was no direction at the moment because of the recession. So while working there, there was a boy I met. He was a kind of friend of mine, very nice, very good boy. While we were taking a break, he was talking. He had a second job, which was at ACC, I guess. So he was here just only a few months temporary, but he encouraged me to go take a CNA license. And at that time, ACC was providing the internal training, paid training. I believe minimum wage was $4.25 then, but ACC was paying $5 just for training. So while working for security guard, it did not make a big difference. Even the security guard was paying about $5 something an hour at that time, back in '90. So while I was working over there and decided to take these classes just to enhance, at least get some skills and at least some direction. So I decided to come and apply for the position. They took me for the trainee, and then I got an in-house training. It was a paid training. So, and everything was done within ACC. So that was a very positive thing. So kind of while working then, while working over here part-time on call just to start off, just to get to know a little bit more about nursing, because I was kind of scared at the time. And I knew it was not my job, CNA job, it was not my job, you know. So just to earn some extra money, and then always they needed support and help because the CNA shortage was tremendous. So they were hiring a lot of registry personnel, quality of care wasn't there. Then the managers who were around me, they asking me to just come and work full time, you know, take a full time. So finally I said, they're really trying to convince me. So finally I said, okay, but there was a lot of overtime because we needed money at that point. So instead of running around places, just stay one place and get time and a half in double time and more hours. So that's what kept me over here. And then I was more loyalty because since they offered me the training, paid training, and offered me a job, so that's what kept me mostly over here, because I was more loyalty.
So, you know, we've had several staff who have worked at ACC a long time. And there was a period when out of over 100 staff, more than half had worked at ACC for more than 10 years. It's pretty remarkable. So when ACC invested in training, like the restorative nursing assistant, it turns out that in most facilities, they only have a couple of RNAs. And the RNA is often considered additional training to people who have a CNA because they're more involved in doing follow-up after people have rehabilitation. So there were years when almost every CNA at the nursing home had an RNA. Wow. And we used to use the terms interchangeably. It was something very special about ACC because it meant that we had staff who were able to make sure people were using their walkers or their canes or their wheelchairs properly. If they were walking in the hall, they were expected to observe if someone was slouching. They would reposition them so that they wouldn't get hurt when they were in the nursing home or wouldn't have skin breaks. They were expected to know people's names and to really help. So if somebody said that their arm was sore, you know, they could see whether or not doing maybe more range of motion exercises, encouraging the person to do some activities to use their arm to, you know, get up and walk short distances. It meant that the more restorative nursing assistants we had in the building, the more care was being provided directly to the residents and not necessarily just because they were on the staff person's list. This day I have these 5 people, I walk these many people down and back in the hall. But there was an expectation that all of the care staff were involved in providing care as needed when needed to residents when they saw that. I think this was very different than other nursing homes. At the same time, you know, in the interviews they talked about the staff shortages, and Patty talked about the staff shortages. And even 2 years later, Linda Wallbaker, who was the administrator then, wrote a long article in ACC News about the staff shortage. And I know that just recently, the biggest challenge for ACC during the COVID period has been the staff shortages. So in many ways, even though we often talk about the regulations and all these other things happening, in many ways, finding good staff who will stay with us, staff who are willing to receive additional training, who will really provide that caring environment is really so important, and it really makes a big difference. So that I think at ACC over the years, it was pretty hard to find somebody who would say, oh, I don't know, it's not my job. You know, I don't have her on my list. I know there have been times when that's happened. And I remember even when I was at ACC, family members would come and complain. And it was always almost heartbreaking for me when the family members would say, you know, I know this happens in other places, but because it's ACC, we expect you guys to be better. And so they would complain, and they would say, because we want you to be better. We want you to provide the care we know can be provided to our family members. And I think that was always such a big part of ACC. So it was the leadership, it was the top down talking about how important it has been to be a caring community. Mm-hmm. But it's also been the family members and people in the community who tell us what they expect.
Well, don't you think it was the family members that kind of drove us to excel in everything that we provided?
Yes.
And it showed with all of the good, you know, inspections that we did and have done over the years. I mean, we're known for that stuff.
Yeah. So I know that lots of times when people say, you know, what is quality care in a nursing home, people talk about the smell test, or they talk about whether people are up and out of bed. And actually, in most of the policy and a lot of the studies that have been done, quality of care in a nursing home is really about meeting the community standards. Mm-hmm. And I'd say that in our community has fulfilled their responsibility and continue to tell us what they expect and what is the standard of care they want to see at our nursing home. So on the one hand, I know a lot of facilities blame regulations and talk about all the top-down things that need to be complied with. I think at ACC, one of the main things has always been understanding what families expect. But I know earlier, Patty, you were mentioning how sometimes it was difficult because family members had expectations that were very hard to meet. Mm. And I'm wondering if we could go back to that part of our conversation and talk, especially if you've had family members at the care center, how was that negotiated, or how did staff learn to listen? Or how did you get them to listen if you had a difference? Do you want to share, Chang?
Yes, I can, and it goes both ways. On the one hand, many family members like myself were very demanding to the staff in terms of the level of care we would like to see, and family members tend to be around at the care center or nursing home to make sure that staff were doing the right thing, you know. So it could be very difficult for the staff. On the other hand, staff really help family members understand what it takes to take care of a resident. As an example, when my father moved to the nursing home, he was 95 years old, and he still loved to eat. And he liked to eat, one of the things he loved to eat was the roast duck, Chinese roast duck.
Oh, boy.
And I asked the director of nursing, I said, well, I mean, it's very greasy, you know, very unhealthy. So I don't, you know, he wanted me to bring the roast ducks for his meals. I said, probably would not be very healthy, you know, to him to eat roast duck anymore. And the director of nursing just smiled at me saying, hey, look, he is 95 years old. Let him eat whatever he wants. So it was a good way to communicate, because even though I had certain desire to keep him healthy, on the other hand, you know, I didn't realize the other side in terms of what a resident in the nursing home really wants. And if he loves to eat, let him eat, because he has earned it, so to speak. So it was a very healthy interaction between the nursing staff as well as the residents and family members. I really want to thank not only the nursing staff but also the kitchen staff, and who prepare all the kind of food that they love to eat. And so this is something that I think most, if not all, the family members really appreciate.
When you talked about your dad wanting roast duck, my father wanted hamburger and French fries. And my mother, of course, would say, now, Bob, you know, that's not good for you, you know. And I would sit there and roll my eyes and think, Dad, you know, for goodness sakes, he's had a stroke, he's old, you know, at that point, 89, something like that. And the staff was very helpful and would be supportive of me, which I really appreciated, when I would just go past Burger King on the way, even though my mother objected, and bring the hamburgers and the French fries, and he just loved them. Along with the other thing, the staff was great with his favorite food. One of his favorite foods at the nursing home was the pumpkin pie. They made, I don't know about now, I mean, if they even make it now, but they made the best pumpkin pie, and that was his favorite, one of his favorite foods. Before the nursing home, before he ever got ill. And so when they brought the dinner, or even before, when he went to the dining area, he saw that they had pumpkin pie for dessert, and he would just ignore all the other food on the tray and just wolf down this pumpkin pie and say, "Can I have another one?" And Mother would say, no. And no, the staff was wonderful. They'd bring to get him to eat. And so I had to point out to my mother that pumpkin's a vegetable.
That was good thinking.
Well, you know, and so he could eat 2 or 3. If that's all he ate, I was happy. At least he wouldn't lose weight or anything. It was great. It worked. All of that worked extremely well. And I realized too, in talking about the food, that was something he thought at the nursing home was one of the best aspects of being there. He loved the food. I mean, when I was growing up, Chinese food was his thing. And if he ate just Chinese food for the rest of his life, he'd be happy. And so the fact that they made Chinese food was one of the options, But made him infinitely happy. He was great with the food here. And then, especially because he was seated usually at a table with a lady, a Chinese lady, roughly his age, and neither one of them spoke the other person's language. But Dad would point at whatever food stuff and ask her in English what it was. And she didn't seem to care what he was saying or of understanding it, because they would talk back and forth. I was here a lot, or there a lot during mealtime, and they would talk to each other frequently. Neither one of them speaking the other person's language, but talk about the great food and point to it and smile and nod. And so anyway, that was
That's
one,
great.
and the staff was really helpful with that.
So in many ways, the advantage of having so many family members involved in the care of the residents was really important,
Yeah.
because that enabled the back and forth with staff.
Yeah.
So it wasn't staff versus family members. They were working together. And I think Jean, who is on remote, had some comments. Jean?
Am I on now?
Yes, there you are. Good.
Oh, okay. I guess I must have muted. Oh, okay. Yeah, I think the staff, I think it's a lot of the interactions with families. Even with my dad at the dining table, there was others that he knew, but they didn't converse, but they're all sitting there eating. But some residents, they didn't eat their food. Their kids ate it, but their kids brought them all the stuff he loved to eat, and he was eating that at dinner. But my dad didn't mind the food. He just ate what was served, and he didn't complain. But what was really nice is it's a real close community, because Chang's father and father-in-law was my dad's roommates. That's how I met Chiang.
Yes.
And it's real interesting because about the duck dinner, because his wife would bring the duck dinner for him because his father-in-law.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. And then my dad would say, oh, that person's a troublemaker down there. She's instigating all the Chinese to get into little squabbles. And it's really dynamic, because I was at the dining room one day, and there was a lady. She was really upset that day, and she was just provoking all these things with people at the table. And then finally, someone had to go calm her down. We had another Caucasian lady who was so irritated. I mean, that was the hysterical. I mean, it was just fun just watching her. But the thing is, staff really knew how to calm them down when they get into those moods, which was very nice, because, some of those residents get agitated. But it's really nice to see that at least they're interacting. But I knew from another experience, because my dad was next door to a lady that I used to bowl with, and she was in a private room. And I knew that she had a sign that said, "Do not get off the bed. You have to call the nurse, because otherwise she would fall." And then I think I saw the daughter at the store one day and asked her how her mom was doing, and she says, "Oh, now she doesn't have time for me because she's too busy playing mahjong. So she doesn't visit her that much because she has other activities." So she stopped by and checks on her, but she said, yeah, she's at that mahjong table playing her mahjong. So that was really great, because activities got changed where the residents were really engaged. Because, back then they didn't have all this. But further along in the last, I think, maybe 5 years, we're seeing a lot of activities that the residents are engaged, especially the Asians, because some of them used to sit in their room and they wouldn't go out. But once that mahjong table came out, you saw who came out of that room that really participated.
So Norm, did you want to add to our conversation? Thanks.
Well,
Thanks,
I think the one thing that I really came to appreciate during the short, months that my mom was at the nursing home as a resident is the fact that all the people there. I'm talking about the staff, whether they were the janitorial or they were the nurses. They all seem to pretty much, from what I could see, enjoy what they were doing. And I think, to me, if the staff were happy in what they were doing, it can only help the residents feel better, because residents, they could understand, they could feel, they are aware when staff may not be happy, and that could cause a problem in terms of how the residents outcome may be that day. So again, that was one of the major factors that I noticed when I would go visit my mom, and it was just a really good blessing to see this happening. And me coming from a medical health background, I came to really appreciate how the staff people at the ACC nursing home distinguished themselves from other nursing homes that I had frequented, as a pharmacist. So again, I really appreciated the work, the service, and of course the friendliness of the staff at the nursing home.
There are so many things needed to develop, both to establish and then to maintain a caring community. And I know that this having opportunities for the residents and the staff and the family members to work together to develop relationships is really important. And then there were other, essential ingredients at the nursing home. And one of them was the medical director. And while we talked about how Gordon Wong was our first medical director, I think he was there for just a year or two. And then Dr. William Fong, who had been on the board, became our medical director and did so for like 19 years. I wanted to go back to some comments that Marissa made in the interview that we did with her. Maybe we could show that now.
What I remember about Dr. Fong, he has this doctor's bag, medical bag, that he always carries. And in time, the handle is all warped out, all jagged, but he loves that bag. And he always sets it at the nurse's station. That's how we always know that Dr. Fong is in the house. And he's always all over the place, in where, he says hi to everyone. In the kitchen, he just goes and says, hi, hey, you guys. And he would remind us about our physical. He's the one that always, does our physical every year, wants to make sure that we're on top of our health. And we also come to know Dr. Fong because in the hallways, he would just talk to you. He would talk to you. He would also, I love him in where he speaks his own, Chinese languages to our staff and then to our residents. And I like that about him. Mrs. Fong is always there. I remember both of them coming to our Christmas parties, to our end of the year parties. So that's how I came to know Mrs. Fong, and then she became a resident at the ACC. And so that's when we have known her for a while, and when she became our resident, it was like, it's like a family coming to the nursing home.
Great. Dr. Fong was really, I think he was the prototype for managing by walking around.
Yeah.
Because go ahead.
If I could add a couple things regarding Dr. Fong, I got to know him really well after I joined the board and became the chair of the ACC Nursing Home Committee. Donna asked me or ordered me to be the chair. And one thing I still remember is he always attended the nursing home committee meeting. Every month he will be there and provide his suggestions and comments and sometimes criticisms. And he was extremely engaged. And the other thing I want to share with you is that he was very much in support of staff development. He always talked about making sure the staff knew new skills to be able to move up, if you want to call it, from the CNA to a LVN or LVN to the registered nurse. If I remember correctly, Donna, you can correct me, he really initiated the Jimmy E Fund. Yes. To get receiving donations from Mr. Jimmy E. And that particular fund was specifically designed for professional development for the staff. And he was very, very instrumental in making sure that the nursing staff, as well as all the other staff, continue to get new skills, to be willing to improve, which is something very, very unusual, to be able to be so engaged in terms of helping the staff to become more successful. Last thing, as I remember, after he couldn't drive anymore, one day after the meeting, he was sitting at the lobby, and I said, "Could I give you a ride?" He said, "No, my son was picking him up. Probably was Ted." But we talked about it. One of the things he mentioned to me was that he was every year for the Chinese New Year, he hosted a party for the staff, just to celebrate Chinese New Year. He asked me if I could continue that practice. I said, fine. I said, I'll be more than happy to take over that function because he was retiring. So something that he really cared about the staff.
Do you want to say something?
No, he was. I was on the nursing home committee at the time, and his input to the committee meetings was actually really important to all of us on the committee, because there were certain things that we didn't understand, and sometimes we just didn't understand the concept, and other times we thought we would know what it was on the agenda, but he not only would clarify it, but explain the importance of it, so that we knew what to emphasize in our conversations and the kinds of decisions that we made as a committee. But didn't he also set up, and maybe you can help me with this, there were a lot of other training sessions that went on at the nursing home, that people who were not on the nursing home staff came to the nursing home for training. Am I remembering it correctly?
So
from other
right. One of the things
personnel
that Warda mentioned was that ACC, from the early days and throughout its existence, realized that having the class portion of clinical training at the nursing home was as important as people doing their practicum on the floor at the nursing home. And in many ways, that was one of the best ways to recruit people who were very good students and who really were attentive and very interested in working as CNAs or LVNs. So over the years, the nursing home has worked with several nursing licensed vocational nursing programs, as well as CNA programs, so that people both on the staff and new people could take advantage of that. And it really, I think it helped everybody be on their toes and pay attention to really ACC as a place for learning.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, the other thing that happened in the early days was that ACC had never charged fees for services. I think people contributed when they had the activities at the Tambara House, or they were able to get the city to reimburse some of the instructors. But gee, having a nursing home meant that we actually had to bill people for services rendered. And we had to bill Medicare, and we had to bill Medi-Cal. And it was a whole new venture to have a business office, and ACC really didn't have any of that infrastructure at the time. So one of the things that happened was that the state required ACC to have an expert come in and show us how to do it, to set it up, to help us set up books, to help us learn about the reimbursement requirements, to make sure that our billing went in on time. I think one of the things that happened over the years was really the struggle to get everything done on time so the bills went out on time, because if the revenue didn't come in, we wouldn't have enough for payroll and to meet the bills. It's not like ACC did not start out highly capitalized. ACC had very few assets when the nursing home first started. So we were fortunate to talk to Eschaton, and Eschaton said, oh, we have a guy who's been with us a long time, and he could help you. And it was Ray G.
Yeah. Wow.
And for many, many years, from before '87 until somewhere, I think it was in the later 2000, maybe it was 2010, 2012, when he retired from Eschaton. As part of his work duties at Eschaton, Ray helped ACC. So there were times, and Marissa can remember even, when we were still learning how to, like, people were very shy about giving the bill to the family member, and then the family members, you know, some of them had to pay us directly, some of them paid a portion for a portion of the care. And so it was through Ray's efforts that ACC ended up being able to get their books in order, get audits, do all the things that Medi-Cal and Medicare required.
Yeah.
Did you want to say?
No, I just remember I brought a check in to Marissa every month and just handed it to her, and she made sure that it was the right amount, or that I asked her, you know, we talked, was this the right amount? Yes, okay, good. Is this the right date? Okay. And then at some point she would give me a copy of the bill and the fact that it was paid, so I could deal with whatever I had to deal with. But still, yeah, I just brought a check in. I hadn't thought about that in years. Yes, I just brought a check in every month. And then later, when my mother was there, after my dad was at the nursing home for 5 years, and my dad and my mother was there for 2 or 3, I've lost track. But so I was quite accustomed to working with Marissa and making sure of whatever I owed, and she would confirm it, and then I'd just bring her a check. And I don't think it's that way anymore. I have no idea.
Well, I think Marissa still does that in part as
Does
part
she?
of part of what she does managing the office. But I think in those early days, especially when the board was trying to make sure that the finances, that the nursing home broke even. There were, I think, many years where over 70% of the days of care provided were reimbursed by Medi-Cal.
Oh, right.
And especially in those early days, there were years when Medi-Cal only paid 1/2 of what the true cost of care was. And so that led to ACC needing to find ways to supplement that care. And while some nursing homes might charge a little extra when people were paying privately for the care and then subsidize and make up the difference, ACC really wasn't able to do that because so many of the people in the community really didn't have the wherewithal, and they had to rely on the state to pay for their care. So over the years, those of us who have been involved with nursing homes know this term payer mix. And it's the idea that not everybody at the nursing home relied on Medi-Cal. Not everybody could rely on Medicare because that meant a higher level of rehab and other things, and Medicare, of course, only wanted to pay for a few days, or people who paid privately for care. And that got to be pretty expensive. And in our community, there were times when it was only like 10% of the residents. But there are other times in the later years when it grew to be 1/4 or more.
Really?
Yeah, largely because the reputation of the nursing home grew, and people wanted to come, and then many people had long-term care insurance, and that helped to pay for part of the care. It was like your insurance was a subsidy for what you had to pay out of pocket. So over the years, struggling with the finances at the nursing home was a big challenge for the board. And Ray G had just a big role in helping us all learn and manage and pay attention to the payer mix and be fair to everybody so that those who were paying privately got excellent care, and those for whom the state paid for their care, they also got excellent care. And most of the time, staff had no idea who relied on Medi-Cal and who was paying privately. And certainly for many family members, it made a big difference because they weren't treated differently because their family member didn't have the money to pay for care. So the nursing home in that way really met a huge need in the community and was achieving the mission of the organization. But it was a long, long time struggle. There were other people who, besides Dr. Fong and Ray, who really were special at ACC. I don't know if other people had names that they wanted to share.
Oh, you mean like Francis Yee?
Yeah. Like
Francis
Lee and
Mickey Amadera.
And Mickey Amadera.
Yeah, we're talking the core volunteer group.
Yeah. Not only were they spending something like 20 hours a week helping with bingo, but they were also in the building helping. I remember meeting Bernice Owe when she was 94, and she was still folding laundry in the back of the nursing home. She had been doing that since the nursing home opened. And when I asked her whether we could nominate her to have some recognition from the county, she said, "Well, I don't know. It's kind of late for that. I've been doing this a long time." But she let us. And so she got one of the Heroes of Human Services awards from the county. But there were many people like that. And I think when we talked to Marissa, she also wanted to shout out to Star Miyagawa.
Oh, absolutely.
Star, yes.
Star.
Star. Star Miyagawa.
Did he come and bother you every day?
He would come and bother me in a way that it makes your day. He is a joker. When he comes in, you just know he is there in the building, and for good reason, because he's there to give our mail that are sent out to the other buildings. He's also here because he asks us, what do you guys want for lunch? And I like that about him. He always treats our staff like his own family. Everybody knows him, a star, because he is a star. When he comes in, everybody just says, Star, and everybody just turns, the newcomers turns around and they look, and it's Star Miyagawa. To this day, I don't think I even know his real first name. I just know him as Star, because it's like he brightens your day, like the star that brightens the night. He brightens your day.
Yeah, Star was in the building almost every day. So besides seeing Chiang every day when I first started at ACC, I saw Star.
Every day.
And Star did all kinds of things because he made sure people ate lunch.
Yes.
He always had goodies. And we would have big talks about what the latest thing was on the market that nobody had. Like there was a time they had those salted plums, the moi, and it was surrounded by some sweet hard candy. Mm-hmm. And that was like the new thing for a while. And he would bring it and surprise people. And so he introduced a lot of people to sort of the latest thing. So Star was, I think of Star like the Cyrano de Bergerac of ACC. Star's father was a newsman. And Star picked up this habit of listening to everything that was going on and sharing it. So it wasn't like gossiping, but it made a big difference to know how many family members and people who were involved in business in the community knew each other in the nursing home and the networks of communication. And oftentimes, if Star knew something, well, within a few minutes, everybody in the building would know it. So it was always an excuse to celebrate special days for people too. He knew a lot about people's children's birthdays and their celebrations and sponsoring over family members, getting citizenship, things that were really important. If it wasn't for Star's persimmon jelly, I probably wouldn't have ever made persimmon jelly as part of the jam enterprise. Yeah, that was all Star. So let's see. Fundraising. So you were mentioning Francis, and Francis did so many things. You know, the proceeds from the ACC nursing home fundraiser, as well as other fundraisers, funded so many, I guess we could call them amenities, because these were things that, insurance didn't pay for. So for instance, while it was okay to have lifts and slings in nursing homes, there was really no line item in reimbursement to get that. And the fundraisers helped us. One of the things Warda mentioned in a conversation I had with him was how many years there was only one lift in the entire building. And they would bring it from hallway to hallway. And now we have one for every hallway.
Yeah.
And people don't have trouble finding one when they need it. I remember when we were using briefs in the building, and for the longest time, if a family had money and could pay for briefs were used. But when everyone realized just across the board that it was better health care for people to use briefs rather than to be incontinent or to be embarrassed by having accidents, ACC decided that it would use some of its fundraising funds so that everybody in the building could have briefs.
Yeah.
And then we had this big thing where what was the right size? And a lot of the people at ACC were pretty tiny. So we really needed small, medium, and large sizes. And the nurses used to try to stockpile them for their residents in their area. And over time, though, we were able to figure out a way to have enough supplies in every area that that doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah.
But there were many years where we both learned what was the best way to provide care. We figured out how, if we weren't being reimbursed directly to do that, how to get the money to pay for those supplies or to provide that approach in doing care. And I think it all contributed to why ACC is really a special place.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I have to move on. So I'm the moderator. I'm supposed to move on. So, you know, ACC, I was going through my closet the other day and I realized that I had these t-shirts and they have this golden survey thing.
Right.
Do you want to talk about that? I think maybe, did that happen when you were there?
Let's see.
I think
Help
the
me.
first one
Well,
was in
actually,
2002.
I think both Chang and I were on the board.
I think it was like 2007 or something like that.
That was, I think, the first
one. One of them. Anyway, so we had several years.
No, the first one was 2002. That's what my T-shirt says.
Oh yeah, 2002, and then we had 2 or 3 more golden surveys,
Yes.
because we all had to hang up, you know, the displays,
signs.
the signs.
Yeah.
And then we couldn't get it anymore because if I understand correctly, I was told that the surveyors were told to make sure that they found some little things so that we are not perfect.
Some minor infraction.
Minor infractions.
Yeah, and I remember one year we missed it because the towels were on the wrong shelf in the laundry room. And I thought, what do you mean they were on the bottom shelf and they should have been higher
Yes.
for some reason? And I just thought,
Yeah.
and we didn't get a golden survey for that reason. That was early in the
Yeah.
2000s.
But anyway, we really pride ourselves to try to get the golden survey. It means
Yeah.
perfect scores. There was
Perfect.
no deficiency at all.
Wow.
And after we received the golden survey, several years, I can't remember exactly which years, but we were told that it would be very difficult to get another one because the state was concerned that, they were concerned that the surveyors were not doing enough to find
Their
deficiencies.
jobs. Yeah.
So it was
Isn't that something?
it was disappointed, but at the same time, it really helped the staff build the team spirit, because we had to
Absolutely.
go every year to try to get the golden survey, and so it was something that we all were very proud of. We all celebrated. Remember, we had parties for the staff after we received the golden survey. It was something that was extremely important to the staff at that
It's
time.
something to be very proud of.
Yes,
Yes,
very much
yeah.
so.
And it led to other, I'll say, awards.
Yes.
Like the USA
U.S. News World
News
Report.
and World Report has, for years, I don't know how many years, has put us
Right.
at one of the best nursing homes in the country.
Yes.
And there were some others.
Well, they were also the Silver Award.
Right.
I can't remember,
Bronze
Bronze
Award.
Award.
And Bronze
Yeah.
Award,
And
yeah.
so we always, with the 5-star ratings from the CMS, so we try to make sure that we not only recognize that ourselves we're doing a good job, but also we want to get validations from external sources, so that it's not just our opinions, but it's experts' opinions, the government opinions, that we are one of the best nursing homes in this country.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, pretty remarkable.
Yeah.
So keeping it going is really a challenge. And I think right now, sort of in this well, it's not post-COVID yet. We're still in COVID.
Yes.
It's really a challenge. Shortages of staff. What other, there are so many challenges still. But the board also wants to focus on, both the accomplishments and things that need to happen in the future.
Yes, one of the things that, as I look back, the COVID pandemic really causes our nursing home to be reactive. To take actions when there was a outbreak or something. So it's all in the defensive mode. And in the past, before the pandemic, the nursing home and the ACC as a whole was always proactive, forward-looking, trying to make things better. So unfortunately, because of the COVID, and we were unable to use the energy and the positive force to make our facilities better, to make our ACC better, that I'm hoping that as the COVID pandemic becomes less and less severe, we could bring back that spirit, that energy, so that we can continue to improve.
Okay, well, I know we've gone on for quite a while now. One of the things I wanted us to connect back with a question of, so what else was ACC doing during this whole period we talked about from '87 to really the early 2000s? And I don't think we want to think of the ACC board as only thinking about the nursing home, because I think they wanted to do many other things as well.
Well, they have.
And they have, yes. But I think there was a lot percolating. Even while every month when the board met, they talked about how things were going at the nursing home. Maybe other things were happening too. I don't know if, maybe Norm, you'd like to share a little bit. You talked a little bit earlier about what was happening on the board in those in the 90s, and what led to a decision to get more staffing, or what else they wanted, what other services they wanted to have in the community.
Well, from what I can recollect, I remember that when I was on the board, we looked at not only just the nursing home services, but we are looking at community services, bringing programs that would be helpful, not just to the non-ambulatory, but also to the ambulatory, people who could walk in, participate, and be part of a continuum of services that you don't need to be in a nursing home to be participating with the Asian Community Center itself. And I believe that was part of the reason why the decision was to try to bring on more professional help i.e. bringing on people like Donna Yee to help us in the administrative areas and to help plan for a future evolution that would bridge the continuum of care, not only with the nursing home, but to bring forward possibly residential care in the area of assisted, and also ultimately it went 360. We now also have independent residency. So I think this kind of opened up the area for additional services that were probably very sorely needed in the community for people not necessarily coming into the nursing home, but in the community in general.
Many times the board feels that even if they don't know anything about running a particular service or program, they could find people to do it. And that shouldn't stop them if that's what's needed in the community. So I think the mission of the organization and focusing on services and care that's needed is still an ongoing priority for the board. So I wanted to thank everybody for taking the time. We've gone on a little bit, and especially Jean, you, and Norm for staying virtually, and Judi, Patty, Chang, thank you very much. So I'm going to close this episode for today. I think the next episodes will probably go on to talk about some of the other community programs that ACC developed after 2000. So thank you very much for listening and watching.